Today we are going to be going over the application processes and portal deep dive, part two. So this is the second part of a two-parter. This one's particularly special in that we're going to be including multiple demos. So live demos of how to navigate the portal, create a disclosure, and create a project. Next slide, please. I will be facilitating this presentation today, as usual, as the EEC sector strategist, and I'm joined today as well by Cindy. Cindy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Cindy Meyer. I am the small DG sector strategist for the program administrator.
Thanks, Cindy. And next slide, please. So today's icebreaker is, what's your favorite solar conference or event you've attended this year? So it could be anything from a big conference or even just a interesting meeting or event you've attended this year so far. And you can drop that into the chat, please. Next slide, please. RE+. Yes, that was a big one. So here's the presentation schedule for the entire series. We're on our fourth presentation of the series today. We'll then be going into ongoing program requirements, which is a two-parter, then marketing best practices and consumer protection, and then ongoing resources and opportunities. Next slide, please. And here is today's agenda. So we're going to be doing first a portal introduction, then a demo of general walkthrough of the portal, then creating a DG disclosure form, creating and submitting a part one application, and then creating and submitting a batch, and then questions and comments. As a reminder, please feel free to drop in any questions in the Q&A feature at any point in the presentation, and then we'll be addressing those at 2 points in the presentation itself, one halfway through and then one at the very end, in which we'll address those. Please do stay on mute throughout the presentation. Next slide, please. And now I am going to hand it off for the portal introduction.
Thanks, Connor. Mike, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so some general information about the program portal to kick us off. So the program portal provides access for approved vendors to view, create, and submit disclosure forms, as well as view, create, and submit project applications. It's also a place where designees can view and create disclosure forms. But it is only for approved vendors and designees. It is not for end user customers such as the homeowner. And please keep in mind that only one login per approved vendor is allowed. However, multiple people can be logged into an account at one time. So if you have multiple people working on the program, you can all share a login. Okay, next slide. Okay, the portal can be found at illinoisshines.com, or the direct link is also provided. A screenshot on the slide shows where on the illinoisshines.com you can find that. It's the portal login button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And go next slide. All right, next slide. Okay, so we're going to kick it off for some portal demos. So I'll start with a general portal walkthrough. Then we will create a distributed generation purchase disclosure form. We will then create and submit a part one project application, and then the same for batching. I did want to mention that there are disclosure form walkthroughs for all project types, along with step-by-step portal guides. And those are available on the portal updates and help guides page of the AV and designee resources section at illinoisshines.com. And then I think that was the last slide before we can start our demos. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Give me just a moment. All right, so the screen that I'm sharing now is what you will see when you first log into the portal. And over on the left-hand side here is the menu bar. So this holds the home tab, the vendor options, and then your options as a designee if you operate as a designee in the program in addition to being an approved vendor. So first we will go over the home tab, which is what we're already on. There will be announcements listed here. As you can see, this in orange, this is an announcement regarding the CDCS block closing on August 30th. These will be updated as needed. And then there are also quick access links to project applications, disclosure forms, and batches. So I will briefly just click on each of these to show you. So the project application dashboard will appear here. You can use this to view and edit applications. It's just another way of getting to see all of your project applications. So back to the home tab, you can view disclosure forms. And here you will get an option where you need to select which vendor you want to see disclosure forms for. So the reason that this comes up is because you can link more than one approved vendor to a login. So if you do operate several different approved vendor companies, we can link those all together so that you have one single login. So just keep that in mind and let us know if that's something that you'd like to set up. In this case, there is only one. So I will select that vendor and then choose select vendor to bring up all of the associated disclosure forms. And then back to the home tab, and our last option is to view batches. So this will take us to the batching dashboard. We can view the batches that have been created as well as edit and create new batches. Okay, so that is the overview of the homepage. And next we have the vendor menu. So you will use this menu to view the available actions to you as an approved vendor, which are disclosure forms, project applications, and batches. So to kick the demos off here, we will start with disclosure forms. So I'm going to click on disclosure forms, and this will open my menu of disclosure form options. So we can view the disclosure forms that we've already created. So this will be just like we did from the home tab. And then we have the option to create a distributed generation form, create a community solar form, or upload from a template, which is the CSV upload option that's also available. So for this demo, we are going to create a distributed generation form. So I'm going to click on that, and that will open up a new form for us. So we have the form ID up here at the top. And if you do have multiple vendors, just double check and make sure that you're creating it for the correct vendor. And then our first selection here is to choose a form type. So for this example, we are going to create a project purchase form. And then you get to choose the name of the form. I am going to name it Sally Solar Test Form, but it can be anything that you choose. I will choose save and continue, and this will open up the first section of the form, which is the customer contact information. So you will choose the customer type, and I will choose residential in this case. Choose the customer name and address. Phone number. An email. And if a customer does not have an email address, you can continue, but you will need to open up this waiver form, print it out, and have them sign it, acknowledging that they do not have an email. Next, you will select the customer's utility company. For this example, I will use ComEd, and then save and continue. So the next section is the seller information. So you can enter whatever seller information you choose. You can also pre-populate it with the approved vendor contact information if the seller is the approved vendor. So in this case, I'm going to pre-populate that. And then the installer information is next. So you will select whether or not the installer is known. So if you choose no, the installer is not known, you will have the option to enter 3 potential installers. In this case, I'm going to select yes, the installer is known, and then pre-populate it with the approved vendor contact information. And then I will save and continue. The next section that opens up is the project purchase information. So I'm going to put down the deposit owed from the customer, and I will note that this is all just sample information. It's not an endorsement of anything that you should be putting here. This would be representative of what's on your installation contract with the customer. So I'm going to say $15,000 is going to be owed to the seller at the start of project installation. And the final payment due is going to be $1,000 with no other intermediary payments. And the final payment will be due 60 days after installation. And then time any other intermediary payments are due, there are none, so I'm just going to put NA there. The project purchase price will be pre-populated based on my other inputs here. And then save and continue will bring you to the fees and total cost section. So there are 2 different sections in the fees. So there are fees that will apply and other fees that may apply. So I will add an example of both in this case. So an example of a fee that would apply every time may be an interconnection fee. Say it's $100 and it would be due upon interconnection submission. And based on the amount and the number of payments that I put here, it will calculate the total amount for you. And then an example of fees that may apply, I will put a late payment fee in the amount of $15, and I would say the payment is more than 30 days late. And you can add multiple fees to either of these sections as well. All right, the next question is going to be about the collateral fee. So will the approved vendor charge a collateral fee or withhold part of the customer's REC incentive payment? So I'm going to say yes in this case. And I have done some math before this. So I have the estimated collateral amount that we're going to withhold as $1,100. And I'm going to mark it as withheld. And the estimated date for return of collateral fee, I'm going to say 30 days after completion of the REC contract. And then we need to put in the conditions for return of the collateral fee, which is going to be expected system performance maintained over the life of the REC contract. So again, these terms should be reflective of your installation or REC agreement with your customer. So I will save and continue, which brings us to the Illinois Shines incentive payment section. So we need to put in the estimated expected value of the REC incentive that will be received by the approved vendor. So if you already have this calculated, you can put that amount in there. Otherwise, it does link to a payment calculator. For this example, I will show how that is used. So an Excel sheet will open up here, and you can put in the estimated first year production in this green box. And for this example, I will use 20,000 kilowatt hours. And we are ComEd, which is group B, and we are in the 10 to 25 kilowatt range. So my estimated REC incentive is going to be $22,042.03. So I will input that there. And then we need to indicate how much of that payment we intend to pass on to the customer. So for this example, we're going to pass on 90%, which was $19,837.93. And when will the approved vendor submit an application to Illinois Shines for this project? So I will say within 30 days of executed installation contract. And then is the installation contract contingent upon selection for the Illinois Shines incentive? We will say yes. And save and continue. And I will mention as well, this payment calculator is available on the program resources tab of the website. So the next section is around the timing of installation. So you can either enter days or a date. So for this example, I will say that we anticipate the project installation to start 30 days after the contract is signed. And we estimate the completion of the installation to be 35 days. What is the estimated date for the seller to furnish a mechanic's lien waiver? Let's say 6 months from installation. And then indicating the party who will be submitting the interconnection application. I will say that is the approved vendor, and then save and continue. All right, so system size specifications go here. So we've got the DC size and kilowatts first. So this sample project is going to be 25 kilowatts DC, 20 kilowatts AC. The expected life of the project, with 25 years, will be roof mounted. The estimated gross annual electricity in the first year, we used 20,000 before, so we're going to stick with that. And project performance explanation. We are going to say that it's based on PV watts estimate with shading considered. I will save and continue, which will bring us to the net metering and DG rebate. If you will be applying for the net metering and DG rebate with the utility, indicate that here. If you say yes, you do need to provide the rebate amount and then who will keep the rebate. So for this example, I will select no and then save and continue, which brings us to the project operations, maintenance, warranties, and guarantees. So for all of these questions, if you select yes, you do need to provide information on how many years it's included and then who is responsible for that operation, maintenance, warranty, or guarantee. So I will do just a variety here. For the example. So you need to indicate the panel manufacturer warranty if there is any. Are project repairs included? Is there a roof warranty included? Inverter warranty. And then is insurance included for loss or damage? If you are including a separate project guarantee, such as guaranteed production, you would enter it in this box here. Otherwise, you can leave this box blank if there's no project guarantee. So I will leave that blank. And then save and continue. And then that brings us to the additional terms and disclosures section. So these are just open text boxes, and we need to provide instructions on how to transfer the project if the home or business is sold. So for this example, I will say that the new homeowner must contact the approved vendor to maintain active system monitoring, but put any specifications for this project there. And then if there are any additional details that were not captured by this disclosure form that you would like to make sure are noted or highlighted for the customer, you can put it in this final box. So I will leave that blank and hit save and continue, which brings us to our last section here, which is a submit and download section. So once I hit submit and download, I can no longer go back and revisit any of these sections or make any changes. So it's very important that you are comfortable with the information that you put in here, and that no changes are needed. So I feel good about everything. So I'm going to go ahead and say submit and download, which will bring me to the e-signature page. So we have a couple of different options here. One is to use this green button, and that will send an email to the customer from HelloSign, which is our internal e-signature platform. They will get an email and be able to sign that electronically. As soon as they sign that, the portal will update within a minute or two, and it will update the status of the form to complete. You can also download a copy of the form and either have them, print it out and have them wet sign it and then re-upload it, or you can use your own commercially available signature platform. But if you do use that, your own platform, make sure that you do include the signature tracking pages. Those are required. So for this example, I'm just going to download the form here, and then I will re-upload it in order to complete the form. Okay, so I've now completed the form and uploaded the signed PDF. So I'm going to go back and view my disclosure forms. And you can see the form that we just created here is on top. It is in completed status, which is important to check. It has a start date, submitted date, and then completed date. If I want to view anything, go back and view the data that I put in my form, I can select that option, and we can scroll through and see all the information that was submitted. So right now, that is the basics for completing a distributed generation purchase form. Going back to the disclosure forms, we can view all of the disclosure forms here. And as you learned in previous trainings, the only way to start a project is through a completed disclosure form. So it's very important that you double check and make sure whatever project you want to complete, you want to make sure that that status isn't completed. So I will go ahead and open up the project application menu tab from the vendor menu, and I can view applications, create DG, or create CS. So right now I'm viewing existing project applications. They are all in Part 1 submitted status, and I will go ahead to create DG. And all of my eligible disclosure forms are going to come up when I select that. So only completed disclosure forms will be viewable here. So if you don't see your form here that you want to start a project from, go back and make sure that it was actually completed. So the form we just completed was the Sally Solar Test Form. So I will highlight that and select Start Application. You can also search by form ID, form type, or disclosure form name up top. Okay, so once I click Start Application, I will come to the homepage for the new DG project application. So we've got the form name, ID, vendor ID, and vendor name up at the top. And then we have 6 sections that I can work through. So I will go ahead and start at section 1, which is project location. And much of this is pre-filled. It pulls over from the disclosure form information. So it is very important that the address information in the disclosure form be correct. The property name here, I'm going to leave it as is, but I could change that. And then if there is an odd address, or you know that there's issues with locating the address on a map, please put in the latitude and longitude for that address. We do need it in order to calculate the REC estimates later in the application. So in this case, we've got a straightforward address. I'm going to select Save and Continue to bring us to section 2, which is the project details. And I will select the project type, which in this case is residential. It was a customer-owned system. I need to indicate whether it's co-located or an expansion of existing facility. If it is either of those, I will need to enter the associated project ID. But I will go ahead and leave it to no for our purposes. I'll indicate whether or not the project is located at a public school, which it is not. For the project category, this example, we are going to select an EEC project. And then additionally, I will need to indicate that is a small DG EEC project. And it is small DG because it is 20 kilowatts AC. Because I selected EEC, I have an additional question here. Would I like to request the advance of capital for this project? I'm going to say no for this example and then save and continue. So owner information. I do want to note too that there are some helper text over here on the right-hand side of each section. So for system owner, they're looking for the actual owner of the solar array. So you can pre-fill it with the approved vendor information or the property location. So I'm going to pre-fill it with the property owner location. And then that brings us to the installer. So you can submit an application without knowing the installer, but in this case, I do know the installer and I will use the pre-populated vendor information. You do need to indicate that the installer is DG certified from the ICC. If you select no, you will get a warning that says that the installer does need to be certified. So I will go back and select yes. And then if you do know that there are graduates of job training programs, please enter the number here. And then save and continue, which brings us to the system details and performance. So this top line here, the DC total array output in DC, that is going to auto-populate for us based on our later inputs. So I'm going to skip that and enter the AC size of the project, which in this case is 20 kilowatts AC. If you are using multiple inverters or micro inverters, this is the total number of all inverters installed. And then it is giving me the associated size that we used on the disclosure form here for reference. So I'm going to leave the default inverter efficiency and ground cover ratio in place. And then we need to indicate whether or not the project meets the minimal shading criteria. If you are interested in a definition of what that is, there's a link to the guidebook here, and that definition can be found in the guidebook. So this next section here is where you're going to add all array information. So if there are multiple arrays, you would enter them individually here. In this case, I'm going to do one array. So we're going to enter all of the array details. So we're going to have 350 watt modules, 71 of those, a 45-degree tilt, 180-degree azimuth, roof mounted, fixed mount, and we are not using bifacial panels. So this is my one single array for the system. So I'm going to hit save, and that is going to auto calculate this DC size up here at the top for me. If I had more than one array, I would add it here. And you can also, if you added an array, you can edit it or remove it altogether. But everything looks good here on this section, so I will hit save and continue. Which brings us to section 5, which is the rec estimate section. So for this example, I do want to use a custom capacity factor, but regardless of which you choose, you always need to calculate the PV watts capacity factor first. And I'll show you why that is in just a moment, but I'm going to select the PV watts radio button first and hit calculate, which will generate the standard PV watts capacity factor and the rec output estimate. So I do want to use custom capacity factor, so I will now select that radio button, and I'm going to choose a capacity factor of 19%. My explanation is going to say something like custom factor generated by an engineer. And then I will hit calculate. So this is giving me a rec amount of $4.99. And then the reason why we needed to calculate the PV watts estimate first is because of this right here, which is comparing the rec amount in the PV watts section to the rec amount in the custom capacity factor section. So we have a 5% difference. And this is noted in the guidebook, but if there is a rec amount variance of either plus or minus 20% from the PV watts to the custom capacity factor, that is a flag for an application processor to reach out and say, hey, this variance exists. We want to confirm that you did intend to input this capacity factor. So it's just a double check. But everything looks good here. So I will save and continue. To section 6, interconnection details. So I need to put in the interconnecting utility, which is ComEd. And then I will indicate whether or not construction was completed on or before September 15th, 2021. We'll say no in this case. And then for the final interconnection approval date. So in this example, the system is not interconnected yet, but I'm estimating that it will be by April 19th. So I'm going to put in a future date there. If there was a difference between the utility account holder and the property owner, I would note what that difference was here. And then in the inverter details, you're going to put any information about multiple inverters or microinverters here. So I have 20 kilowatt AC system. So I'm going to say 2 10 kilowatt AC inverters plan to be used. Just anything descriptive to help make it easier to determine what's being installed. This next section is the rec tracking system. So because the system is not yet interconnected and these fields are optional, I do not know that information yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave those blank and save and continue. So I now have green check marks on every section, which is what you want to have. If you did need to go back in and review what you entered or make changes to that, you can go back and revisit each of those sections. You can also add any comments on this screen. Any required attestations are here. I am attesting that it is a residential project and that I'm aware of any potential prevailing wage implications. I will also need to upload the required documents. So in this case, it is only a proof of site control and a plot diagram. So I will upload some attachments here to satisfy that requirement. And you do have the option to upload additional documents if needed. So now I have all green check marks. I have completed the required attestations. I have uploaded the necessary documents. And so now I am ready to submit the project application. So I will go ahead and click the button. I get a confirmation message stating that I submitted that. And that is almost the last step in submitting an application. So I will go ahead and view my applications, and you can see this form here on the bottom. This is the project that I just submitted. And if you remember in the previous trainings, a project is not actually considered fully submitted until it has been batched, the batch submitted, and then that batch paid. So we are not quite done here yet, as we have not done that final part of the process. So the last option in the vendor menu here is batches. So I'm going to open that up here on the left and view my batches. Now I have a sample batch that I had created earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and just start a fresh batch. So I will hit the create batch button. I know I've only been creating DG projects, so I know I'm going to select DG for this. I do need to select a rec contract type. So there's little helper text here for me that 20-year contracts is for public schools and traditional community solar. So my projects are neither of those. So I will select a 15-year contract, and then I only have one vendor ID associated with this account. So I will select that and create the batch. So from this batch page, it is going to give me all of the eligible projects that I have. And I'm going to go ahead and add all of those. So it will pre-populate the size up here, which is important for your first batch. Your first batch that you submit does need to be 100 kilowatts AC of projects, or you will not be allowed to submit. After your first batch, there's no minimum size requirement. And it is auto-calculating the batch fee as well. And then I need to select how I intend to pay for that. So I will select ACH. I'll save my batch, and then I will go ahead and submit it. Okay, so you get a little box that will tell you that you have an invoice coming for a payment processor, which is Stripe. So that will come to the main email that we have on file. If you do need that sent somewhere else, please let us know. But you should receive that within 1 day. And if you don't receive it, please reach out as well, and we can confirm where it was sent or have it resent. So this is the batch we just created. It is currently pending payment on the batch dashboard. When we receive payment, this will be updated to paid status. And if we go back and view our projects, we can now see that these are all in batch 22034, which is what we just created, and that batch is pending payment. And that is the end of the batching process. We are not going to be going through a part 2 application for time, but we will do a pre-recorded video of that process so that you can watch it independently.